Okay, so I asked you guys on the community tab on my page what class you would want to see a teamwork build on next. It was pretty close between Thaumaturge and Magus, but Thaumaturge won. If you want to have some say on what I do on this channel, you can check out the community tab. Anyway, for today's Thaumaturge, we're building a kobold today. More specifically, a cavern kobold. The main reason we want to be a cavern kobold for this build is for that acrobatics to squeeze effect. Our strength is not going to be high, so the climbing thing really doesn't matter. Being able to squeeze into tight spaces will allow us to hide better so that enemies fall into our snares, which don't worry, I'll get to in a second, easier, and then we can jump out and hit them with our weaknesses. And our background for this build is going to be the Street Preacher. Dubious Knowledge will help us when we do recall knowledge, which we'll want to do sometimes in this build. For our implements, we're going to go with the Regalia, Bell, and Tome. Our first one is going to be the Regalia. As long as we're holding our Regalia, we get a +1 circumstance bonus to Deception, Diplomacy, and Intimidation. In addition, allies that can see us can use Follow the Expert even if we're not expert in the skill in question. That's kind of the important part here. So, that champion that isn't very good at stealth can at least get a bonus to it, since we're going to have high dex anyway. When they do this, the bonus from Follow the Expert is a +1. In addition, our Regalia also essentially gives us the Aura of Courage champion feat for free. So a +1 on saves against fear, and every time we reduce our frightened value as normal, we also reduce the frightened value of every ally within 15 feet of us. Frightened is a very common debuff and very debilitating, so getting rid of that sooner is great. At level 7, we get the adept benefit of our Regalia. So our bonus to Deception, Diplomacy, and Intimidation increases to +2. In addition, when others use Follow the Expert to follow you, their bonus is +2 if you're trained, +3 if you're an expert, and +4 if you're master or legendary. In addition, our Aspiring Aura's bonus now applies to all mental effects rather than just frightened. In addition, you and your allies within your aura gain a +2 status bonus to damage rolls. This is +3 at 11th level and +4 at 17th level. For Intensify Vulnerability, every time we hit the target of our exploit vulnerability, we can choose an ally that we can see. That ally gains a +1 circumstance bonus to attack rolls against that creature. And if we crit, it's a +2. This lasts until the beginning of our next turn. For the Paragon benefit, every time we critically fail on a check to coerce, make an impression, or request, we get a failure instead. And when allies follow the expert on you, they receive a +3 bonus if you're trained, and a +4 if you're an expert or above. Also, allies in your Inspiring Aura are not flat-footed from being flanked unless you are also flanked. Also, if any of your allies are clumsy, enfeebled, frightened, sickened, or stupefied, the status penalty that your ally takes is reduced by 1 as long as you are not affected by the same condition. Next, we are going to pick up the Tome as our second implement. While we're holding our Tome, we gain a +1 circumstance bonus on all checks to recall knowledge. In addition, since we're level 5 at this point, we can gain expert proficiency in 2 skills temporarily. Our Tome only needs to be on our person, we don't need to be holding it for this effect. But these skills are temporary, so we can't use them for anything permanent. At 11th level, we get the adept benefit of our Tome. So, as long as we're holding our Tome, at the start of each of our turns, we can have a recall knowledge check about a creature that we can see. If we succeed on this recall knowledge check, then we receive a +1 circumstance bonus to our next attack roll against that creature. Also, when we gain temporary skill proficiencies at the beginning of each day, we are a master in both. For Intensify Vulnerability for our Tome, every time we use Intensify Vulnerability, we roll a d20 and set that result aside. At any time before the start of your next turn, you can use that d20 roll for an attack roll instead of rolling a new d20, as long as you're attacking the target of your exploit vulnerability. And our last implement for this build is going to be the bell. So as a reaction, if the target of your exploit vulnerability makes a strike or attempts to cast a spell that targets you or one of your allies, you can use one of the following effects, depending on whether it was a strike or a casted spell. If the triggering effect was a spell, then you can use Distracting Cacophony. The target must succeed on a Fortitude save against your class DC or become Stupefied 1 until the end of your next turn. Stupefied 2 if they crit fail. This doesn't make them make a flat check in order to avoid losing the triggering spell. However, it does lower the chance of the spell hitting. Disrupting Harmony is used when the target makes a strike. The target must make a will saving throw against your class DC. If they fail, they become Clumsy or Enfeebled 1, your choice. If they crit fail, then it's Clumsy or Enfeebled 2, your choice. For the Intensify vulnerability of this implement, every time we hit the target of our exploit vulnerability with a strike, while holding our bell, the creature takes a -2 penalty on saves against Ring Bell. If we critically hit, then it's -3. This lasts for 1 round. Okay, now that that's all out of the way, the starting stats for this build should be Strength 10, Dexterity 16, Constitution 10, Intelligence 12, Wisdom 10, and Charisma 18. Alright, for our feats, we're going to start with Diverse Lore. Now we can use Esoteric Lore for recall knowledge checks about any topic as long as we're willing to take a -2 penalty on the roll. In addition, when we succeed on our exploit vulnerability check, we can compare the result to the DC of recall knowledge for that creature. If that result would be a success or a critical success, we gain knowledge as if we had successfully recalled knowledge. For our ancestry feat at this level, we'll take Snare Setter. This gives us training in crafting and the Snare Crafter feats. In addition, we now have access to all uncommon kobold snares. We can also choose uncommon kobold snares when selecting snares for our Snare Crafter feats. For our first class feat at level 2, we'll take Talisman Esoterica. Each day, during your daily preparations, you can create 2 talismans that are temporary items, but they can't have an item level of more than half your level. You do have to know each talisman's formula, but you don't need a formula book for them because you remember them through oral traditions. You automatically know the formulas for every common talisman in the core rulebook of your level or lower. Then for the free archetype, we're only taking 1 dedication for this build, and that is the Ranger dedication. We become trained in Survival and Ranger class DC. We also gain the Hunt Prey action. None of this is hugely important, but we do need to take the Ranger dedication to take the rest of the feats on the free archetype. Since we're at level 3 and we're talking about general feats, I'm just going to go through them now. The general feats we want for this build are Toughness, Die Hard, Canny Acumen for our will saves, Incredible Scout, and Expeditious Search. When you take each of these is up to you. We're taking these particular general feats because, number 1, 3 of them I take for every build, because they're that good. And the others, we're going to be pretty good at perception, and we're going to be sneaking around. So, we might as well take advantage of that perception. At level 4, we're going to start with Monster Hunter. Now we can recall knowledge as part of our Hunt Prey action. Us and any allies we tell gain a +1 circumstance bonus on their next attack roll against that creature. But you can only give this bonus once against a particular creature. Then we'll pick up Monster Warden. So when we grant bonuses through Monster Hunter, we can also give a +1 circumstance bonus on the next saving throw against that creature, and a +1 to AC against that creature's next attack. Thus now we have an offensive and defensive bonus from recalling knowledge. For our ability score increases at 5th and 10th level, we'll want to increase our Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, and Charisma. Then for our Ancestry feat at level 5, we'll want to take Snare Genius. So, during our daily preparations, we can prepare up to 3 snares from our formula book for quick deployment. If a snare normally takes 1 minute to craft, you can craft it for 3 interact actions. Snares prepared in this way don't require any resources to craft. The number of snares that you can prepare in this way increases to 4 if you're a master in crafting and 5 if you're legendary. When you craft and deploy a snare that deals damage, any creature that quickly fails its save against your snare also becomes flat-footed until the end of their next turn. At level 6, we'll pick up Gravity Weapon. This will give us the Gravity Weapon focus spell. We're not always going to be able to stealth around and get our enemies to fall into our traps. So this will allow us to do a little bit more damage on top of what we get from our exploit vulnerability. So on our first strike each round, we gain a status bonus to damage equal to twice the number of weapon damage dice of the weapon we're using. Then it's Ranger Resiliency. We gain 3 additional hit points for every Ranger archetype feat we have. Because it's always good to have extra hit points. Especially since we're going to gain a lot because we're not taking another archetype here. At level 8, we'll pick up Elaborate Talisman Esoterica. Now we can create 4 temporary talismans per day instead of just 2. Then it's Snare Specialists. If we're an expert in crafting, we gain the formulas for 3 common or uncommon snares. If we're a master, we gain 6. If we're legendary, we gain 9. Also, each day we can prepare up to 4 snares for quick deployment. This works identically to and stacks with Snare Genius. However, if we're a master in crafting, we can do this with 6 more snares, and if we're legendary, we can do this with 8 more snares. At level 10, we'll start with Share Weakness. We have to be using Exploit Vulnerability with a mortal weakness to use this action. However, if this is the case, then we can choose one ally. That ally's strikes apply the weakness from mortal weakness the same as your strikes do. This benefit ends when your exploit vulnerability ends or you share weakness again. Then we'll pick up Hunter's Luck. This gives us the focus spell of the same name. When we recall knowledge but haven't rolled yet, we can re-roll the triggering check twice and take the better results. So basically, we get advantage on a recall knowledge check. Pretty good. Since we really want that critical success. We already talked about the general feats for this build, so at level 12, we're going to start with Quick Draw. Between recall knowledge, exploit vulnerability, moving, and attacking, we're not going to have a whole lot of actions. This will help a little bit with that by allowing us to draw our weapon and attack for one action, especially if we get ambushed. Moving on to the free archetype side of this level, we'll take Ranger's Bramble. This will allow us to slow down enemies if we run out of snares. And it also does persistent bleed damage if they crit fail, which is awesome. At level 13, it's time for our Ancestry feats. And we're going to pick up Vicious Snares. This allows us to do 1d6 extra damage with our damaging snares. And if we're legendary in crafting, we get 2d6 extra damage. We're not quite there yet, but we will be soon. At level 14, we'll take Grand Talisman Esoterica. This will allow us to attach 2 talismans to an item, as long as we're the ones working on it. This can lead to some interesting and effective combos, one of which I'll talk about in the teamwork report at the end of this video. Then we'll pick up Scout's Warning. As a free action, when you're about to roll Perception or Survival for initiative, you can grant all your allies a +1 on their initiative rolls. For our ability scores at level 15, we'll increase our Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Then at level 16, we'll take Twin Weakness. Basically, for 2 actions, we can make a melee strike. On any result other than a critical failure, we deal the damage from exploit vulnerability. The weakness damage, not the other stuff. And if you hit, you deal double weakness damage and the strikes damage, allowing us to do even more damage if we happen to hit with a melee strike. This will help make up for the fact that we have low strength. Then it's Can't You See? With this feat, any creature that attempts to point out your location must succeed on a DC 14 flat check. On a fail, their allies misunderstand them and don't know where you are. On a critical failure, their allies think they pointed to an entirely different location chosen by the GM. Also, when a creature critically fails to seek you while you're hidden or undetected by it, it thinks you're in a totally different location determined by the GM. In either case, we appear to be hidden in that location when we're actually undetected for the purposes of targeting and further uses of the seek action. For our last ancestry feat at level 17, we'll take Dracomancer. It doesn't really matter which dragon you are, as long as one of the spells you gain from this feat is invisibility. Then at level 18, we'll take Elaborate Talisman Esoterica again. This will give us 6 talismans a day instead of just 4. Then we are definitely going to need powerful snares for this build. Now when we set a snare, we can make its DC equal to our class DC or the normal DC for the snare, whichever is higher, making low-level snares actually viable. At level 20, we'll want to increase our Strength, Con, Wisdom, and Charisma. Then we'll pick up Ubiquitous Weakness. Now when we use Exploit Vulnerability and choose Mortal Weakness, we can choose any number of allies within 30 feet of us. Their strikes apply the Mortal Weakness damage just as your strikes do. This ends when you stop benefiting from Exploit Vulnerability. And the last feat for this build is going to be Master Monster Hunter. We can now use Nature to recall knowledge about any creature. However, that part of this feat is not important, as we already have Esoteric Lore for this, and we've had it since level 1. No, what's important here is that we gain the bonuses from Monster Hunter and Monster Warden on a success as well as a critical success now, making it much easier to get those bonuses. Okay, for today's teamwork report, some of you guys may be wondering, why are we taking Exploit Vulnerability stuff and Recall Knowledge stuff? It seems like they do the same thing, but actually they're 2 separate actions. That being said, you're not always going to succeed on Exploit Vulnerability, and rules as written, there is nothing stopping you from using both, even if you succeed at one. Yes, if you succeed at both, you're probably going to get the same amount of information. However, you're also going to give all of your allies and yourself those nice little bonuses that go on top of Recall Knowledge and Exploit Vulnerability. Thus, it is to your benefit to use both. For our talismans, what you pick for those is ultimately going to depend on your party. For example, a Basilisk's Eye is a great thing to give anyone with a shield, especially a champion. Basilisk's Eye is affixed to a shield and is activated when you shield block a melee attack with that shield. The attacker must make a DC 25 Fortitude save or become slowed 1 for 1 minute. Yes, talismans are only a once and they're gone thing, but that's why we want to make lots of them. And we already want to be legendary in crafting because of our snares, so why not use that crafting skill to make a whole bunch of talismans too? There's also a great combo you can use with any fighter that has Intimidating Strike, which is already a fantastic feat. You also need to be high enough level to take Grand Talisman Esoterica for this combo. You'll need a Binding Coil Talisman and a Fear Gem Talisman for this combo. The Fear Gem Talisman allows you to make an Intimidating Strike for 2 actions. If you've already got Intimidating Strike, then you can make the foe Frightened 2 on a hit instead of Frightened 1, and Frightened 3 on a critical hit. The Binding Coil allows you to make an athletics check to grapple an opponent. On a success, instead of the normal grapple effects, the coil wraps around the target with one end staying attached to your weapon. The coil breaks if you move any further away from your target, but not if you move closer. But a fighter that's using Intimidating Strike isn't going to want to move further away. I would rule that this would make them flat-footed, as you're essentially just grappling them with your weapon. For snares, again, it's going to depend on what your party is made up of. But a good low-level option that you have access to with this build is the deadweight snare. The creature must make a reflex saving throw against this. On a success, the target takes a -1 penalty on attack rolls for 1 round or until it escapes. On a failure, the penalty is -2 and it lasts for 1 minute. On a critical failure, the target also drops any metallic item it's holding. This is just a better version of the disarm action. So yeah, very good snare at low levels. Then for a mid-level option, you've got the Mudrock Snare. The first creature to step into the snare must make a reflex saving throw. On a successful saving throw, the target takes a -5 foot circumstance penalty to its speeds for 1 minute or until it escapes. Yes, that's right, that's on a successful saving throw. On a failed saving throw, the target is stunned 2 and takes a -10 foot circumstance penalty to its speeds for 1 minute or until it escapes. On a failure, it's stunned 3 and immobilized for 1 minute or until it escapes. And immobilized does equal flat-footed. So another great snare for this belt. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, teamwork is vital.